pleased to have Dr. Albrecht Classen with us this afternoon. Several months ago, Dr. Classen emailed me and said that from the Honors College at his university, he had the practice of going and visiting schools, and he asked if he could come and speak to us, speak to some of our classes, as well as give a lecture, give a talk. So just a few words about Dr. Classen. He is a university distinguished professor at the University of Arizona. He's in German studies. His field is medieval German literature and history as well. He is a prolific scholar. I've actually not met anyone who is as prolific an academic scholar as he is. He gave me several of his books. These are, with the exception of this one is from 2014. 2014. All the others are from 2018 to the present.
Wow.
And that, I learned last evening that he has about 10 book projects in process. And he has published many scholarly articles as well. So he's a voracious writer, and we are very glad to have him here with us now. His interest what he's here to talk to us today about is the humanities and the importance of the humanities. And so I'd like to, without further ado, present to you Dr. Albrecht Classen.
Well, thank you so much. Just as a word of introduction, I have hardly ever seen a colleague who has organized a visit so perfectly and smoothly as you have done. I really think this is phenomenal. I mean, everything to the dot. Great acknowledgement. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure for me to come as a visitor from the neighboring university. I will talk, well, from a perspective of the humanities in general. I do not want to limit myself to German studies, but rather I want to speak as a humanist and as a representative of our larger discipline. And what I also would like to reflect on in general, what concerns all of us, basically that addresses our existence, the purpose of our existence and how we explain our existence and how we can basically create new conversations. And so I firmly believe that this is my own kind of effort to leave a footprint in the world by establishing conversations. And the more conversations we can have across disciplines, the more our entire field will grow and will improve. What I'm trying to do with the title of this paper, glad to see so many, it's good. The less seats there will be, the better, it's good. There are more seats here up front. Thank you all for coming, that's nice, I appreciate that. As you can see from the title of the paper, I have used deliberately sort of kind of scientific language. And I want to use the scientific language, and I will use this throughout. I will use a couple of metaphors that I hope scientists will understand. So in a way, I know you're all sort of probably in the humanities more or less, but I ultimately try to reach a level where we can begin to understand each other. I firmly believe that the future of the academy does not rest in silos of various disciplines, but ultimately the big perspectives today very clearly indicate already interdisciplinarity. Things are changing, and the big question for us will be how we in the humanities can contribute to the growth, let's say, of the computer industry, how we from the humanities can contribute to well-being, healthcare, medicine, how we as humanities scholars can contribute to the understanding of our environment. These are big, big things. So one of the books, for example, the green one deals, for example, with water in medieval culture, eco-critical perspective. So I'm using a very modern eco-critical argument coming from, let's say, environmental science, and I apply that to medieval literature, and I think it works. It is sort of only the first one that has come forward, and I think that these are the right new ways. We're trying to find the same language, and with this same language we can then hopefully build more bridges. So let me see, I need to, it's a little bit difficult. Let's see whether does that still work, or is that just going to?
It should.
Should work, right? Yeah, it does. Wonderful, great. So let me just explain a little bit. I have a couple of pictures of the Amazon rainforest. I think every scientist in the world will acknowledge that the Amazon rainforest, amongst other areas or habitats in the world, represents an enormously rich and potential area of life. There's so much new medicine that will come out of the Amazon rainforest. There will be so many new materials, so many new structures in the future for aircraft, whatever, coming from spiders or what other creatures in that forest. There are enormous potentials. That is the birthplace sort of our world, and it's going on. And I like to argue that the humanities represent such a rainforest. So how do we explain this? How do we fight for the humanities? This is, of course, all our raison d'etre. We are in the humanities. So in a way, I will preach to the converted. And I accept that challenge because I think it is extremely important for all of us to reflect upon the fundamentals of our disciplines from time to time. So hopefully I will run into many open doors. But I hope then to take you further through the next room and maybe come across another door which I maybe can open for you too. So we'll see how this all works. So a little bit small. Basically, I would say what we are going through today is nothing new. I mean, the humanities have always, and I'm sorry, a little bit in your way, you might want to look that way, perhaps. So, basically, the humanities has always been in a difficult field. If you go back maybe 250 years, there were no humanities. There are 2 or 3 seats left here. Humanities is a field where we include everyone, right? And we offer seats to everyone, please. There was no philology. Until maybe 1719, we did not have language disciplines. We had rhetoric, we had philosophy, we had no language departments as such. There was no Latin. That's what you learned anyway. So our field has always been somewhat contested. The contestation today might be different. It is certainly different, it's more difficult, but the challenge itself, or the boat as I say here, it's the same. We have crisscrossed the ocean many times, and the question is simply, what kind of rudder, what kind of keel, what kind of engine will we use in the future to take our metaphorical boat into whatever future harbor? That is sort of my question here. The problem, of course, for all of us in the larger scheme of things is that we are not productive. In other words, we don't produce money. We don't produce the grants. I know this, at my university constantly, every day, in geoscience, in medicine, they get millions and millions and millions of dollars. We, in humanities, we cost. So should we give up? No, not necessarily. I have been involved for some time in sort of hearing board at my university where we were evaluating legal cases. Never mind. And so I learned a little bit about the situation of the scientists. And to my shock, and it might not be aware amongst you all, that normally whenever a scientist is hired, whether in chemistry, electrical engineering, they all get, irrespective of their salary, they get a startup budget of $0.5 to $1 million to set up their laboratory. So in my case, it was very interesting. It was somebody who was fired or was about to be fired. He barely had set up his lab, then he was going to leave. He was later fired, and indeed he lost his tenure-track position. And so the entire $1 million were lost. So we're talking about millions, maybe $50 million a year that the universities spend on the scientists so that they can bring in another $50 million. This is an odd game of numbers. So I think we would be very well advised not to be so fearful of the scientists and the argument, well, we cost money and they bring in money. We work with much less money. Once we have a book, that's it. I don't need any more big lab equipment to do my research. Give me a text and I'm creative, right? So this is sometimes a little bit a funny argument. I also observed many times, because I'm serving as a speaker for the Arizona Humanities, you're serving on the New Mexico Board of the Humanities, that the public is very, very interested and absolutely convinced about the value of our field. But they don't want to pay for it. Now, that's sort of the discrepancy. Yeah, they all say they love literature, yes, they love music, they love the arts, but to pay for it or to use the tax dollar for our field, now that's sort of the divide, because I think ultimately they don't have a full understanding of the true value of what we do. I'm sure everyone in this room is deeply convinced about the value. There's one seat left right here for you. But how do we convey that better to them? How do we convince them about this? Yeah, so how do we measure the actual value of literature? How do we value or categorize the value of languages? I talked to a French class this morning, I talked to a German class, and of course they're already converted. But how do I convince, shall we say, certain type of legislators of a certain party that the United States is a little bit more than the world? A little bit less than just the world, you know. So we know there are many senators in U.S. Senate who do not even have a passport. That means they never leave this country. That means they do not need to speak a foreign language. And even if they travel abroad, they have translators with them. So they never face the reality. And so they just cannot judge what we do. They do not understand what it means to learn a language and how to apply the language. This is just a simple fact. I mean, this is a sad situation, and we face, shall we say, a sea of ignorance. And that is a huge challenge. So, you're all convinced, right? You're here anyway, but you want to have a little bit more, and that is good. Bless you. Santé. Salut. So I admit I will not be able to tell you really completely new things. I hope, however, I will gel things that are all in your brains and maybe bring it more closer to our awareness so that we can develop a better form of discourse. We need to have rhetoric ready to defend ourselves, explain, and we need to have examples. So I will combine my discussion with some political points, some literary points, some philosophical points, and then we can see how this all will convince you that this is the right approach to this. So, let me just jump a little bit about this. As I said, this is not a new debate, okay? My forefathers, your forefathers, professors 100 years ago faced very similar problems. Actually, they were, to some extent, much worse. In most countries, there were just maybe 1% of professors teaching French or teaching German. That was not the common thing. So we are actually today in a much better situation than we were. But the universities have grown in general, so the percentage might not have changed. So we really need to think in larger terms, and we need to think of the various target groups, because our discourse must be specific with respect to administrators. They always think in terms of money. You know, that's all they're concerned about. Understandably, you know, because they are responsible then again to the higher ups, and those again are responsible. And everyone talks about money. I understand that. But we need to understand that the discourse goes from target group to target group. That's different. When we talk to you students, that's a different thing. When we talk to the parents, again, that's something different. When we talk to colleagues and when we talk to scientists. And I would like to emphasize right away, in my personal experience, talking with science colleagues, I have always found that the science colleagues in chemistry or whatever, physiology or in physics, they're actually some of the best supporters of the humanities. So I do not want to demonize these people. They really know how to appreciate. Whenever I go to concert and exhibits, I meet colleagues from those fields. They know how important that is. To what extent they actually will and support us in the Senate, faculty senate, or whatever it might be, that's another issue. But as people, as colleagues, as neighbors, let's not disrespect them. They are our allies to some extent, okay? I would like to say. So, but the most important group is, of course, you, the students. Because this is our future. We are, as faculty, we are together here to build bridges to your future. I mean, I got this funny question in the German class this morning, and the student was totally puzzled when I said, we are proud of you.